Yeah. But sure.
It's your life.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Americans with Safe Access Google Hangout. We have brought guests from around the country and a couple from around the world to hear their feedback on Sanjay Gupta's documentary Weeds. And so I'm excited to see a lot of, actually you're going to recognize a lot of faces here of people that were in the documentary. And I want to start with Dr. Alan Shackelfeld. Can you let people know what you thought of the piece and some of your first thoughts in just watching it?
Yes. Can you hear me now? Excellent.
Yes, I can.
I thought the piece was extremely well produced. He tried to cover a great deal of territory in a relatively short period of time. I think there were the emphases were excellent. Because I'm so focused on the medical, I think I would have preferred to have seen a little less time spent on some of the pop culture side of things, but I think the storyline developed extremely well. And I think the emphasis certainly on the benefits that Charlotte saw using Charlotte's Web and Chaz, of course, are astounding. There are many, many other examples, of course, and I think that I would like to see, let's say, some additional pieces done in the future that kind of focus a bit more on some of the problems with studies, and maybe expand a bit on what actually is being done research-wise and what we hope to be able to accomplish in the near and midterm with additional research on cannabis.
You know, he did pack a lot into a small piece. And Paige and Matt, I want to turn to you all. You both did such an amazing job. I know this is a really difficult topic for the two of you to talk about, and I want to commend you both on your bravery. But what did you think about the piece overall?
I personally think they did a nice objective story on Charlotte. We waited a long time and turned a lot of press down to go with the right venue that was going to tell Charlotte's story correctly. It wasn't a drug story. And so we took a risk with Sanjay. He was publicly against cannabis at the time, and so we were a little nervous. But I'm pleased with it. I agree with Dr. Shackelford that there was a lot of that pop culture, but I do think they had to reach across to both sides of the audience to get this story across on a national news source.
And Matt, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think they did a fantastic job. You never know exactly what what spin they're going to put on it, and I think it was very well-rounded, very well-produced, and just like Dr. Shackelford said, it would have been nice if they spend less time on the pop culture in general. However, what are we to expect with the general media? It's going to be out there. It's going to happen.
And what about you, Josh? You were that was the first time I've seen you on media talking about being a caregiver and a provider of medical cannabis. What did you think?
Well, I was very. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
There you go.
I was very pleased, and I thought that really out of all of the documentaries that I've seen on medical marijuana, or marijuana really in general in the past, out of all of them, I think that this was probably the most responsible and well done one. I do share the sentiment of we could have taken a little bit less of the bong smoke, but I think as far as Paige said, it is a bit necessary to kind of draw those two lines together. However, having said that, I think that reports like this are vital, and they're also starting to show the American public on how you can bridge the gap, or actually separate the two, if you will, the medical and the recreational, because we get asked that all of the time. Well, Colorado, when can I come there and smoke a joint with you, Josh? Well, it doesn't really work that way. And I think that once you see, a story like this, you start to understand the impact that medicinal cannabis has. And I think that the world is seeing that now. And now that you have a central figure like Sanjay Gupta, one of the top medical doctors in the world, not just the United States, this brings this to the front of the stage. We've been waiting for this for so long, and I know Americans for Safe Access has been waiting for this, and all types of other advocacy groups. This is a huge night for us, and this documentary has really pushed us over into the conservative soccer mom realm, where you're going to start to see those kinds of people take notice.
Wonderful. And so, Neil, I know that you just published a op-ed in the last couple of days coming after Kevin Sabat, and I didn't hear a lot of his talking points. So I'm wondering what you thought of the Sanjay Gupta piece.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's a big deal. It's a change in the medical journalism for the American establishment to have this piece. So this is a milestone, and especially the focus on pediatric cannabis use, which people really haven't seen much of in, even though pediatric cannabis use for medical purposes has gone on for so long, but people really didn't see it or appreciate it until now in the mainstream media. I mean, there was a few cases of autism here or there, but this was a really thoroughly documented seizure disorder with Charlotte. So I think that's going to be huge, and I think it's also super huge to have a neurosurgeon who's on faculty at Emory and respected by the public, talking about the fact that cannabis can protect the brain from damage. I mean, there's no other qualified person in the world except really a neurosurgeon to talk about what brain damage and brain protection. So I think that's a huge moment. And then it was really great for the public to see the Israeli medical use of cannabis in hospitals and nursing homes. The fact that they actually have a center in the Bathsheba hospital there was huge. And I've heard about the doctors who run that facility. They've set it up for pediatric use and oncology wards, inpatient cannabis use. And I'm hoping that we'll get to a day like that here in the U.S. I have a piece on Alternet in the last couple of days about pot myths, pot propagandists, anti-pot myths, and I did see a number of those about the halfway mark, and I would, like this Dr. Gruber from Harvard talking about white matter damage. I mean, it's like they had 15 subjects in that study, and they'd been using cannabis for a very long time, and they were all using it illegally. They were from ages 16 to 33, and they're just, we don't know what the impact of using cannabis illegally is on the brain. And I feel like we ought to, take that with a grain of salt. The same thing with the addiction numbers. They're very much conflated with people getting legal problems in them. I kind of go through all these myths in my piece today on Alternet. So like those things, the potency myth. I mean, cannabis has been potent for a long time, and oral preparations are potent, and they've been like that for eons. And people can regulate. And I think the reason why it's important to highlight these sort of harm misconceptions is because it's going to determine how carefully people want to control cannabis. Because we know it has benefits, and so what are the risks? And that's where I think Dr. Gupta's documentary could have been a little bit more in depth in looking at how those studies came about.
Well, he got quite a bit of attention, so I'm hoping this will be his first of many documentaries. I think he's still we're accepting his apology, but we'd like to see a little bit more from him, a little bit more coverage. I want to turn back to Paige and Matt. It was really wonderful how they covered Charlotte and her condition, and I'm getting a lot of questions over Twitter about how she's doing, and I also would love to hear a little bit more from you all about your advice to other parents that are in this situation.
When we decided to do this story, well, first of all, she's doing amazingly well, just like in the video, and like Sanjay Gupta said, she, in that 3 months where they came and filmed, 3-month hiatus, and then came back out 3 months later, that there was a difference in just that 3 months that he noticed with her. So she's learning things that she didn't just lose in that regression. She's learning things she could never learn, and we didn't think that was possible. So she's, amazing, unprecedentedly amazing right now. and Matt just got home from Afghanistan yesterday, so he can probably even have a different perspective because he's away for chunks of time. So
yeah, I can honestly say, typically I'm gone for about 3 months, and then I'm home for about 3 months. So Charlotte's, we were just talking about this. Charlotte's been on the use of cannabis for
18.
A year and a half now. So I've come and gone numerous times, and I can honestly say, every time I've come home, I've noticed progress. And there was even one clip in the story tonight where, they said as responsible physicians, hey, we've got to look into this. We've got to see if there's, what's the long-term damage that might be done. And I can honestly say that with every month that's gone by, I've seen progression, not regression.
And she's still having that, a couple seizures a month, 2 to 3 a month. But as Sunil was saying, it is a proven neuroprotectant. We own the patent. Our country owns the patent on this as a neuroprotectant. I feel like I'm seeing that of all this, and she's pharmaceutical free. She's 17 months pharmaceutical drug free, and I don't know another Dravet child off of all pharmaceuticals for that long. So and the drugs we did try with her are 100%. I can say with 100% certainty they are not neuroprotectant.
Right.
So we're seeing this amazing thing with her. I think it's got to be very difficult for Dravet parents and other pediatric epilepsy parents to watch this and know there is this thing that could not only help my child's seizures and progression, but be a neuroprotectant out there. But I can't use it, and that's what I'm getting on my phone just constantly all night. That they're angry.
Yeah, that's gonna be my next question. Is how are parents reaching out to you all?
Oh my goodness, it's heartbreaking and it's wonderful and it's unbelievable that they would have to move and uproot to use this medicine. It's unfortunate, to say the least.
Yeah, at Americans for Safe Access, we get an average of about a dozen phone calls a week of people who are asking if there are any resources available to help them relocate from Mississippi, Tennessee, Arkansas.
I know, about a dozen an hour now that we've come public with this, so at least.
This is Sunil. Let me just say, as a medical geographer, I went to school studying geographic patterns of health and disease. This is a huge medical migration that's happening in this country. I'm hearing about it from here in various places. People going to Colorado, coming to Michigan, crossing borders. This, if anything. If anybody's not convinced, the fact that somebody would uproot their lives and go thousands of miles somewhere else to use a treatment should be a huge reason, evidence enough to people how significant this is for people's lives. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a geographer.
No, thank you. And Josh, we're getting a bunch of questions from people about the industry itself and how available high CBD strains are. And just sort of what is the state of the industry in the states that have medical cannabis laws? If someone was to just show up in Colorado or New Jersey or one of these states, would they be able to find the same kind of support that Charlotte's finding?
That's a very good question, and whoever's asking it is right on point here. We get that question a lot. There's really two sides to that. It's very difficult at this point in time, and there's 20 medical marijuana states, and really, with the exception of some work that some great people are doing in Michigan, where there are some high CBD strains available there. Of course, in Colorado, with our organization that's called the Realm of Caring Foundation, it was really founded after we'd seen the positive benefits with Charlotte and now all of the other 40 kids that we're treating, and we'll be treating in the winter 200. So we have a lot of access to the high CBD strains here in Colorado, and we're here to help any family, any child, and any adult that can come in here. We have a waiting list right now, but we've beefed up our production. So the answer to that question, in Colorado, there's going to be enough here come the fall and winter based on our harvest and what we're doing. Then you have California, and California is an anomaly because you have, the amount of people in Los Angeles County as you do in all of Colorado, and we still don't see those high CBD strains in California because really you have to look at the model and the lifestyle out there has largely been, I realize it's medical, but that's a wink, wink, nod, nod. In some situations, I know there's a lot of people use high THC strains for medicines, as we sell those as well. But the CBD revolution is just getting to California, and the Realm of Caring Foundation, we are expanding into that market, into California, because there are literally, as we're finding out, thousands of children who have similar afflictions to that of Charlotte that we're going to get out there to help. So, you know, having said that, really, Colorado and Michigan and California are really your best bets. But if people have want further information on that, they can go to realmofcaring.com and get in contact with us. And we have you know, all kinds of staff and volunteers, and we wish to be a resource for these people that want to learn more. Especially, you know, I mean, like Paige said, we're 12 phone calls an hour. I mean, literally hundreds of phone calls a day rolling in, you know, after you see this wonderful story with this wonderful little girl. And we anticipate thousands more. And so we want to be that resource. There's always so many questions. And then, you know, to the question of, can I come out to Colorado? Can I come to California, to one of these 20 medical marijuana states, and just get plugged in and connected, you know, immediately? The answer to that is, you know, unfortunately, no. There are hoops that you have to jump through, and it's different in every state. You know, in Colorado, our medical marijuana is regulated by a division of the Colorado Department of Revenue. It's called the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division. And you have a series of hoops that you have to jump through in order to be able to get this type of treatment. As Paige said in the documentary, you know, they didn't have to go to one doctor, but had to go to see 2 doctors. And you know, we really didn't. We try not to send, you know, young children to just someone who does nothing but, you know, medical marijuana, and that's why we work with Dr. Alan Shackelford, and we do our best, if we can, in any instance, to deal with that child's primary neurologist as well. So realmofcaring.com, and we'd love to answer any other questions. There's all kinds of different specifics with families, but we're here to help you in any way that we can.
Thank you for that, Josh. And also, I just want to let people know that all of the laws that exist across the country, they're being implemented by individuals who are just getting involved. That if there's not currently a medical marijuana law in your state, you can connect with our organization, Americans for Safe Access, and it's time for you to start meeting with your legislators so that you can have those laws in your state. So if you're ill or if you get ill, those will be in place. Now I have a question actually for Sunil and Dr. Alan Shackelford. I'll go with Dr. Alan first. But you know, something that's striking a lot of our viewers is that how hard is it for a doctor to get the information they need to make a good decision about medical cannabis? I mean, something that Sanjay Gupta has been saying in interviews and in his op-ed was that he felt like he had combed through a bunch of data and had been misled. And so for doctors who are looking at this, you know, how hard is it for them to get information, and where can they find it? And I'll start with Dr. Allen first and then go to Sunil.
Well, it is in fact the case that most of the studies, most of the reporting tends to be in the medical journals that doctors read as part of their ongoing medical education, and most of that doesn't really deal with cannabis as a medical treatment option. And one of the reasons for that, well, there are a couple of reasons, one of which is that out of in the neighborhood of 150,000 clinical trials currently underway worldwide, according to clinicaltrials.gov, which is a website that tracks clinical study of everything, from new cold remedies to asthma treatments to cancer treatments. And this is run by the FDA and the National Institutes of Health. There are 347 out of 150,000 are on marijuana. So there aren't many studies being done, and so there's not a great deal of information to report on. Having said that, some 20,000 trials have been done since about 1960. That's not a huge number, but it is something. And thanks to authors like Sunil and Greg Carter and others at University of Washington who have published some extraordinary reviews of the medical cannabis literature, it is more readily, this type of information is more readily available to physicians, but you still have to dig for it. And much of what Dr. Gupta reported on, and much of the information that he cited as being responsible for his change of mind in all of his investigation here, is a result of all of us who have been engaged in this arena having dug so deeply and then summarized it to him in our conversations with him. Of course, thereupon he did his own research and went to the source material directly, which is what a responsible scientist would do in any event. And so he arrived at his decisions independently, of course, but we were able to provide him with some direction for his investigations. And I think that, unfortunately, physicians typically don't have access to a lot of the information because there isn't a lot of information available. Hopefully that will change in future. But right now it really is a digging exercise, and you really have to be interested enough in the topic to actually kind of wade through a lot of material. And Sunil may have a different opinion about that.
Yes,
and by the way, I do agree that this is an absolutely fundamental and remarkable moment in time that has been a long time coming, and hopefully will be just the beginning of an expanded discussion in the national media, such as CNN on this topic, and many other related reports.
So thanks very much, Alan. I appreciate that you've had a chance to look at some of our articles. We've created some online medical education resources for physicians, continuing medical education accredited sources, and I'll give two websites that patients can give to their doctors, or if there's any physicians on or healthcare providers on, they can check out. One is called theanswerpage.com, theanswerpage.com. It's based out of Massachusetts, and it's been featured on the Massachusetts Medical Society website, which is the oldest medical society in the United States. There's lots of really good reviews there for doctors to learn about the use of cannabis medicines, dosing, pharmacology, science, politics. I've been fortunate to be able to write some of that material, so that's one place to go. Another one is medicalcannabis.com, which is an organization run by an organization called Patients Out of Time, and they have they've done conferences throughout the country to educate physicians with leading researchers from around the world, including Israel. Dr. Raphael Meshulam and other physicians from Israel and Brazil have come to these conferences, and they've recorded them on videos. And all of those are available for physicians to watch and get credit through the UCSF medical school. So medicalcannabis.com and theanswerpage.com. My own website, cannabinergy.com, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here. I've got some of those articles that Dr. Shackelford mentioned, free for anyone to download these reviews, because I think it's very important for physicians to be able to have their access to this information. Even for Dr. Gupta, who's world-renowned and has all the medical, journalism people at his fingertips, they weren't able to quite read the literature until now, even though prior years they've sort of said the data wasn't there. Even though we know there are some huge number of controlled clinical trials. I think there was 110 controlled trials from 1975 till 2010 that were published in an article that involved 6,100 patients. It's a small number compared to other things, of course, and that's because of these ridiculous prohibitions that have made, basically, held up the medical development in a very important area. So, but we do have enough information to say that cannabis, marijuana, does have medically accepted uses in the United States, and that's what Dr. Gupta says in his op-ed, that it's a wrong position. And it's important to know that there are there are pharmaceutical companies that have made extracts of cannabis that have been able to give those to hundreds of patients in double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. And thankfully, they've published that data in the journals for everybody in the medical and scientific community to see. So if you ask the question, if somebody says to you, hey, is there really any clinical trials, like high-quality, multi-center, hundreds of patients trials that show give marijuana or a placebo and find out if it really works? The answer is yes, and it does work, especially if you're looking at pain from cancer or multiple sclerosis-related spasticity or other symptoms like mobility problems. That's really fascinating because, MS is a progressive neurological disease, and people are getting improved mobility. So I think doctors, anyone listening, people need to know that, understand that this country, we do have that level of trials available. And one doctor I've heard here in New York is going to be doing a clinical trial with a cannabis extraction that's made by one of these private pharmaceutical companies. He's going to give to Lennox-Gastaut patients, another form of intractable epilepsy, and Dravet syndrome patients and other types of pediatric epilepsies in a controlled clinical trial. So it's not to say these things should go on, but it doesn't mean that we don't have enough information to start using this in patients, in programs that we have. It's safe enough. Now, the more information we get, the better we can get it. But that doesn't mean that people who are suffering right now shouldn't have access to this. And again, doctors need to get educated on this. As Alan says, it's not there in the textbooks, but that's going to change because this endocannabinoid system is very important. And one thing I want to mention, Dr. Gupta said that, how high use of cannabis, you can shut down your own endocannabinoid system. In moderate uses, we've seen that you can boost your own endocannabinoid system. And that's why possibly we're seeing the benefits in Charlotte. That if people are confused, why is her brain improving, but that other doctor from Harvard says that brain's white matter gets messed up, and the answer is that first of all that she's using a confounded data set of people under stress, and secondly that they're not really looking at these neuroprotective properties. So. And that the cannabinoid system is what it does it plays a key part in that. So. Anyway, thanks for the question. I'm sorry if I went on for a little bit, but there's a huge gap here that we have to fill.
Well, thank you, Sunil. And we're getting a lot of questions about the federal crackdown on medical cannabis, and it's something that our organization is constantly working on. Is reacting to these federal raids and trying to get Congress to pass laws that will end these federal raids. And I'm just wondering if I could take a question across the panel and ask sort of the question. I know I have my opinions, but I'd like to hear from everyone why you think Obama has broken his promises and is continuing to raid medical cannabis dispensaries. And I'm gonna take that back to Paige and Matt. What do you think is happening there at the federal level?
We've been kind of politically quiet about this. We're parents treating our child, but I think it's political suicide for these people to get involved. That's all I can think. Seeing what I've seen and seeing all these children with the same success, I think there must be a reason. It must be, political suicide to get involved. That's all I can think that it is.
Yeah, I would agree with Paige. The days of liability that we live in, who's willing to stick their neck out for anyone else? It's a seldom person. So I'm so thankful for a network like CNN to stick their necks out, and Sanjay taking care of us and giving us this opportunity to let everyone see the other side of what's happening here. So I'm just glad everyone's eyes are finally opening.
I guess Josh, do you want to say something about that, since you're the one potentially taking the most risk on this video with your cannabis dispensing for medical use?
Yeah, it's a question that comes up a lot, and first off, let me just kind of make it clear right now that we face this threat every day of federal prosecution and incarceration for what we do with helping these children, for what we do dispensing medical marijuana. And for one, I know that I do not look good in orange. and I don't want to call the top bunk for anybody. And this is, it sounds funny, but this is what's on our minds a lot. And so we do a lot of picking and trying to get to the bottom of the reasons why President Obama has basically done a 180 and said, do what I say, but don't do what I do. And I think that we get a lot of information, and I'm not going to use his name, but we use a federal lobbyist, Dr. Shackelford, of course, you know who I'm referring to. And this is a person who's in the Oval Office typically once a month and has worked with a lot of different administrations. And I'll give you his take on it because I think it's the one that makes the most sense to me. And that is that, and I've heard this from other people as well in Capitol Hill in Washington, that President Obama is so disconnected from his cabinets. There's a lot of rogue departments that are running out there, and things that he really doesn't maintain much control over. I've heard that from two high-ranking government officials and lobbyists now, where they basically share the view that he has people that are running wild, and where they're running wild is they're controlled by, let's face it, folks, nobody likes to talk about it, but they're controlled by political action committees and special interest groups. And whether that's pharmaceutical companies, whether that's insurance companies, whether that still has ties to the DuPont family and industrial natures or biofuels or whatever the case of the conspiracy may be.
Josh, let me just chime in here and say that I wrote a letter to Obama to help a gentleman who was getting a felony for cannabis distribution for medical purposes in Tennessee. And I did some research and I found out that Obama's own father, the father of Barack Obama from Africa, was brought over here by a foundation called the Samuel Rubin Foundation. They're the ones who funded him to come to Hawaii. That's where he met his mother. And the founder of that institution is named Cora Weiss, and her mother was Cora Weiss Rubin. Her maiden name was Rubin, and her mother, Vera Rubin, wrote a book called Cannabis and Culture in the 60s and early 70s. She was a Columbia University anthropologist, one of the leaders in studying cannabis use in Jamaica, cannabis use around the world, and studied its normal, traditional, natural use around the world, including medical uses. So the mother of the woman whose organization brought Obama's father to the U.S. Was a cannabis researcher and recognized its medical uses. And so I wrote that to Obama. And then I also mentioned that his mother, Obama's mother, who was also an anthropologist, she died from horrible uterine cancer very early, and Obama has talked about that very, pointedly when he talks about healthcare reform, that how tough it was for his mother to get care around the time of her death or illness because of the insurance or something to do with the cost of treatments. There are cannabinoids.
What do you think about the rate?
Well, I'm just saying that, if he's authorizing these things at some level, he's the one that's responsible for this. He should know that his own mother could potentially have been, that illness could have been, there's research that suggests that cannabis could stop the cancer in animal studies that his mother died from. And I'm trying to, this has to be at some personal decision level. I know there's all these special interests and everything, but we know that there are human beings living and dying. Washington, D.C. now has a medical cannabis program, and the mothers and grandmothers of legislators and their pages and their staffers are going to be, seeing the benefits of having access to cannabis in the capital of this country. And so really it's going to be, I think, there's something very human about this. These raids are probably, just this knee-jerk stuff. The law is still there. Humans are very used to just taking advantage of things as long as the system allows it. And it's going to take brave people like Dr. Gupta and people inside the system that really just sort of say, hey, we're kind of done with this. We're done with segregation of cannabis and other medicines. It's just like it just takes time, and eventually, and unfortunately, we're going to have to kind of. I'm hoping that we're going to hear some news in the coming days from the administration that gives us some stops this madness, because it's not right.
Well, in addition, there is a great deal of money going into law enforcement agencies around the country, which supports the salaries of many different police officers and acquisition of equipment and just a whole variety of different types of activities that really primarily goes to arrest and prosecution of marijuana crime, quote unquote. And I think that plays a huge role. The other thing that plays a large role in this country, which really doesn't get spoken about a great deal, is how we finance our elections. And as you know, the term special interest really means that when you make a donation to a political campaign, you expect at least to have your particular perspective or interest heard or addressed. And of course, big donors will donate to both parties, but there really is a propensity to buy influence indirectly by making campaign contributions, and it's difficult to ferret through all of that. That may be playing a role, and in discussions that around the production of this particular special report tonight, that came up. It was a question that was raised as to who stands to benefit from the prohibition of cannabis and the obstacles that are placed in the way of its medical use. And I it's not difficult to find that certainly. Let's assume for a second that, in fact, concentrated cannabis extracts could treat a variety of different cancers. And there, as Sunil correctly said, there is evidence in animals that that's the case, and also in cell culture. And let's just say that some of the things we've observed in our clinical practice were true, that PSA levels in men with metastatic prostate cancer that is now androgen independent, or androgen receptor, where androgen receptor blockers no longer work, are in fact seeing a reduction in the tumor load by using cannabis extracts. Somebody stands to lose a great deal, because treatment of these different diseases is quite costly and quite profitable. So the trail is complex, and I don't mean to imply that President Obama has been bought and sold, but I really, if you interpret some of those memos as well quite strictly, one of them said that nobody will be bothered as long as you're in strict compliance with state law, and California in particular doesn't really have a state law that one can be strictly compliant with, unlike Colorado, thanks to the efforts of Josh and of many other people in formulating the regulation of the Colorado medical marijuana industry. We do have strict and very clear laws that one can be compliant with. So it may be simply a function of strict interpretation of exactly what the Justice Department memos say. I don't really know. I'm sort of.
Well, Alan, yeah. Well, thank.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. No, I think
here.
that what a lot of. Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Please.
Okay, sorry. I actually travel around the country a lot talking to people about medical cannabis, and I think that there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there of why the war on medical cannabis continues. But I will say that beyond the idea of big lobbyists or people really working against us, I really am finding that individuals aren't talking to their members of Congress. And so the reason that Obama came out in favor of medical cannabis was that individual patients showed up everywhere he went on his campaign trail and asked him about medical cannabis. That didn't just happen. It was because individuals worked at their state level to pass these laws. And after Obama was elected, and he made a positive statement to the Department of Justice, that support didn't continue. And so we're actually right now, everyone's federal legislators are home for August recess. That means your 2 senators and your member of Congress are in your district somewhere, probably raising money, but they're also meeting with constituents. And if you're moved by this piece, if you want to make sure that medical cannabis is an option for Charlotte or for yourself, then you have to meet with those federal representatives. Yes, there are lobbyists out there that may have different interests, But if we're not at least mentioning this to our elected officials, no one else is going to. So I just want to invite everyone who is watching to participate in the Peace for Patients campaign. You can go to peaceforpatients.org and get information about your federal representatives. We even make it easy for you. We've got letters you can download, but they're in town. And so if you stop by their office and say, I saw this documentary on CNN, and I want you to apologize too, just like Sanjay Gupta. Maybe they all will. Not really, but they do need to hear from you. They need to know that their constituents, the people that vote for them, care about this issue, and that you want to be represented in Washington. And you know,
that Charlotte cannot leave Colorado because of President Obama. Charlotte, this girl, young girl, I told this to Dr. Gupta at the pre-screening, that she right now isn't legally able to go visit Yellowstone, just right across the border, or to go check out Disneyland in California, because she's a five-year-old girl who's really like exploring and discovering the world for the first time. Why can't she? Because the state-federal conflict, because the government doesn't recognize the medical use because they're choosing not to look at these studies, and that means that crossing state borders with a contraband Schedule 1 is a federal felony, and Obama and his chief enforcer are going to go after this little girl. I mean, how unbelievably wrong is that? That's not right. And we have these pockets of sanity in some states, but this is the outrage of this is what people have to really to get through to their legislators.
Sunil's absolutely right, and in addition, as you mentioned earlier at the beginning of our conversation here, the migration is extremely important. I don't know how many people are coming to the state. I think Paige, you have much more detailed information on that than I, but it's 50 families a month or something that are moving to Colorado. I have emails and calls from people from all over the country. It's remarkable, and that's another reflection of this, as you said, Sunil, lunatic patchwork of ostrich head in the sand behavior. We really have to have some sort of national unifying voice here, and I think that Dr. Gupta may well be that. He certainly has the standing, and I think that certainly his support goes beyond, I think, just this particular broadcast.
Yes.
Well, and it's criminal. We talk about, this is wrong, and that this is wrong, this is okay. When we're talking about something that works so well for these children, and now Charlotte has the ability to go discover and see the world, and she's still kept in a cage here in Colorado. We have to demand more than that as Americans, as citizens, and a couple of things here. Whenever your health is traded as a commodity on the public stock exchange, when your freedom is traded as a commodity on the public stock exchange, we have gone way too far. And instead of going out and activating and saying, I'm going to go fight this or fight that, there's nothing to fight. There's leading by example, and that's what you're seeing Americans do now. You're seeing this level of education, this level of civil disobedience, where they say enough is enough. We've gone way too far down this slippery slope. And so, that's the other theory with the federal government is it's not about marijuana inherently in Obama's cabinet. It's about control. Marijuana is just a symptom, okay, of a loss of control. It's the American public saying, no more are you going to tell me what I can put in my body or in my children's body, especially a benign substance like medical marijuana. And so, we could talk around it in all these different ways. It's been the same thing. Obama, maybe a little bit worse than old GW, okay? But we see the same thing happen every 4 to 8 years. A different puppet dances across that stage, but the marionette stays the same. And it's time that Americans start waking up. People look at us and say, hey, aren't you sick and tired of poking the federal government. And I said, we're not poking the federal government. Our aim here is to poke the American public. We're waking people up, and you're seeing people wake up for the first time. You're seeing real change happen. You're seeing numbers go from the year 2000 for a total of the same Gallup poll, 36% people in favor of legalization. Now you're at 52% in that same poll. Things are happening, and it's exciting, and it's because of the American people. And Steph, you're right in that regard. Get out. Become a part of the solution and not the problem. Start talking to your senators. Start talking to your representatives. The ball's rolling. There's no way you're going to put this water back in the dam.
And that's exactly what I tell people when I hear from someone in someplace like Tennessee or Wisconsin or another state that does not have medical cannabis. My response to them is get active. Go and talk to your state senator and your state representative and show them the video. And if they are able to look you in the eye and say that that does not matter after they've seen the video that is reflective of the problem that your child is having, then you tell them that you will knock on every door in their district and see that they are voted out, or send them to a cardiac surgeon, because as a patient of mine recently said, if you can watch this video and your eyes are dry, then you do need to see a cardiac surgeon for a heart transplant because you don't have one. And that is the truth of it, and I think Josh is absolutely correct. It is, in fact, a matter of people taking control of the really the situation which most closely affects and alters their lives, and that is their own health and well-being. And we do have an option, and I think that all of this ball rolling, the water that's now out of the dam, is going to in fact move that boat rather quickly.
And moreover, Dr. Gupta has said that he's going to do all that he can to repair some of the damage that he's done by telling people for all these years, even though we had studies back then when he was saying that he would vote against pot, that he's ready to do some work to kind of, get us the answers that we need. I mean, there's so many wonderful leads. So I think we're going to see him be involved more. I should mention there's one human study that showed that THC injected into the brains of people with glioblastoma multiforme, which is a horrible brain tumor that Edward Kennedy died of, in a Spanish study in human beings. You could inject THC into those tumors, not CBD, but THC, and you saw a shrinkage of those tumors. And it was a small series, but somebody has got to follow up on that.
Well, I think
I was just going to say, Dr. Gupta should know it's so difficult to operate on glioblastoma brain cases. The tumor's everywhere. I'm sure, as a neurosurgeon, he can understand that this could be huge.
Well, no question. And I also think forgive me, as he was President Obama was interested in him being Surgeon General of the United States in the first administration. I doubt very much that that connection has really been particularly broken in the past 4 years, and I suspect that the President watched this tonight, and I think that's very, very important.
You bet he did. He asked Sanjay, I was talking with Sanjay about it, and he asked him to be the Attorney General of the United States when Sanjay was 38 years old. He would have been 16, Surgeon General, sorry, he would have been 16 years the youngest Surgeon General. So, back to the original question, what's Obama doing? Obama knows what's going on. He sat down and he watched this with a bowl of popcorn. Is he going to do anything about it? Well, that remains to be seen.
It does, yeah. Well, there's a good cardiac surgeon in Washington, D.C. that I know.
We're getting lots of questions. Actually, I want to go back before we end to Paige and Matt. And people are wondering, we're getting lots of questions if Paige has her own Facebook page and what people can do to support you guys.
Charlotte, yeah.
Charlotte, sorry.
Charlotte. No, I have my own Facebook page. Charlotte does not. I'm volunteering for the Realm of Caring, so I answer the phone and I speak with parents every day. That's the best way to do it, is to go through the Stanley family and contact Realm of Caring at realmofcaring.com, and they have a Facebook page as well. They can like it, and just we can chat that way. That's probably the easiest way.
They're asking, how can they support Charlotte? How can people support Charlotte?
I think that we have support. We're doing okay right now with the family. I think they can support the Realm of Caring. They need to stay afloat to treat these. We think it's going to be over 200 patients by winter. 60 are on their way here to Colorado. They need to, and they're not charging enough. And so you guys, they need to stay afloat. So we need people to support Realm of Caring. We're rock solid.
Let me also just thank Matt for being for embracing something that really was quite foreign to you, and a lot of people are fearful of the unknown. People are even more fearful of this unknown simply because it's been demonized for the last 80 years. It's been a very effective campaign, and we have got to recognize, as you did, Matt, and so publicly said so this evening in this piece, that we're not really talking about getting high, an alternative to alcohol or any of that. We're talking about care for your child, something that it really, when I saw Charlotte, was the last ditch effort, and I felt that when I saw her and when Paige and I met. There was no question that not to go forward with this treatment would have been, in my mind, malpractice. And I think more physicians need to see it in that way. But I also think more parents need to be able to embrace something that is new and scary, but potentially very helpful and with so few side effects that, and certainly no lethal side effects, that it, as I said in a different forum, I think it could be first-line treatment, and certainly second-line treatment. And I congratulate you, and I'm humbled by your example. Thank you for being there and doing this, not only for your child but also for children everywhere. And that goes for all of you who are engaged in all of this. Paige, of course, and the Stanley brothers, with whom I've been privileged to work for quite a long time, and I marvel at your inventiveness and your persistence and your so obvious devotion to patients and to Charlotte, of course, but to all of these children, and to Sunil for your academia, your involvement in academia and search for the truth, and your lack of fear to sort of take something that in fact is scary at times, but so obviously needed, and it's a privilege to be on this panel with all of you.
Same to you, Doc. I would have the same sentiment. We've enjoyed working with you over the years, and we've uncovered some pretty interesting mysteries, haven't we? And we're still digging. So thanks to all of you, and Sunil, what a great honor it was to meet you in New York over last week, and had a great time. Couple of Okie boys. We'll have plenty more time, and then, of course the Figgies, you guys. I mean, what do you say? Yeah, I know you don't like to hear it, but your courage. It does take courage to do what you did and what you're doing, and because you did that, there are a lot of other children that I believe are alive today, and a lot more that are going to be alive in the future. So thank you all. Steph, thanks for having me on.
And thank you for taking a risk with us, Dr. Shackelford, and obviously the Stanleys. Everyone was a little nervous when Charlotte came in, but I mean, it was a good gamble, and it paid off. And I just can't. We're so thankful for everybody. Thanks for having us on.
I just want to say one thing in closing. Everyone always comments, "Oh, you guys are so courageous, so brave," and if they were in our shoes, it wasn't a courageous choice. It was the only choice. And one thing that got cut out of the documentary tonight was that I very pointedly made known to Sanjay that I wanted to know why this wasn't the first course of action, why it was the last course of action. And I think that was something that I hope he took to heart. I hope it's something he remembers. And thank God he gave us his choice to move forward with this and give it the recognition that it needs. But I oftentimes wonder, how much better would Charlie be doing today if we would have started treatment with CBD even earlier? because I've seen all the good that it's done. Another thing we don't even talk about too often is all of the positive side effects that CBD has. She eats better. She sleeps better. Her behavior's better. I remember times on some of the other medicines she was on, she'd be literally clutching at my face, like scratching it, and like, this is not even my daughter in this body right now. So, enough said, but I'm so thankful that we found this, and yeah, everyone needs to know that this wasn't a choice for us. It was the only choice, and I'm so glad we found it.
This is Sunil. I just want to say that somebody asked the question about what do they think of Dr. Thurston on the program or his work with Project SAM. Those guys put out a press release after the statements of Dr. Gupta saying that, oh, you know, CNN misled the public because she really got treated not with marijuana but with CBD. And they also went on to say that Gupta wasn't calling for medical use, just for more research, which is, both of those statements are absolutely absurd. And Dr. Thurston, as a director of that organization, that absurdity falls on him as well. So, first of all, CBD has been part of cannabis since the very beginning. THC and CBD go together, and while there's been less CBD, doesn't mean it's been completely out. And some of the strains that have been available, they were probably better because of the small amount of CBD that was there. We're just more aware of its potential now, and so it's not like, oh, it's just pure CBD. This is whole plant medicine, and all the other cannabinoids might be interacting together to make it a good medicine. So I wanted to just respond to that Project SAM statement because it's really not. It's disingenuous and misleading people. CBD is part of marijuana, and moreover, there are some patients that might need THC. THC is not this bogeyman. The FDA allows for THC pills to be given to children in cancer chemotherapy. It's on the label of the drug. So in some children who have epilepsy or other disorders, the tetrahydrocannabinol might be a more effective treatment. So I just wanted to get that clarity out there for anybody that was wondering about the Project SAM people. And I think there's a few other questions, but hopefully we can have another time to chat.
Well, that's a very important point, and I think what's also interesting about the numbers, if you look at the numbers of kids in treatment, sometimes that's the only alternative to incarceration. So if someone is caught with a joint someplace in New York City or Denver, and offered a choice between incarceration or reform school or going to a treatment program with no record, then the treatment program begins to look pretty good, and I think that's contributing to the increasing numbers of children that are being seen. And it's extraordinarily important that this sort of muddying of the waters, like Dr. Thurstone I think has engaged in, and also that Sam is engaging in, is unfortunate, but it needs to be called for what it is, which is disingenuous and deceptive. And I agree with you, Sunil. Thank you for making that clear.
Yeah, at alternate.org, the number two story on there, I'm taking down one of their founders, every 5 major myths that he's propagated. So I encourage people to take a look at that.
I just want to thank you all for joining us today. It's been an hour, and so we're going to have to close this session. But I'd like to invite you all to come back. I think our members would love to continue to hear from you all. I also want to let people know that this dialogue that we're having right now, we've got to keep going. We've got to make sure that we're having this conversation at our dinner tables, at our churches, when we're standing in line at the grocery store, so that people understand that medical cannabis isn't just something far away, but something that's part of our everyday life. And I also just want to remind people to plug in to Peace for Patients at peaceforpatients.org. And thanks everyone so much for tuning in. I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.